Yeah, I can't get you out of my mind, no. Said I think about you all of the time, yeah. Been imagining you all in my bed, whoa. Hey, cause you been running round in my head, yeah. Hey, I can't get you out of my mind, no. Said I think about you all of the time.
YouTube, what's going on? Welcome back to the series that I have where I'm ranking the top 10 players at each and every position going into the 2019-2020 NBA season, and today we are going to do the top 10 small forwards in the NBA. Now, if you missed my last video where I talked about the top 10 power forwards, make sure you click that link down below. A card should be popping up on the screen. Make sure you watch that video after watching this, and at the end I will be putting a playlist on the screen to check out each of the videos that I've put in this series. But without further ado, because this is going to be a pretty long and hectic video, let's get on to small forward number 10. At the number 10 position, I have Robert Covington. Robert Covington, in my opinion, is definitely one of the more overlooked players of last year. When you look at his impact on that Minnesota Timberwolves team, a lot of people overlook it for reasons I don't know. Maybe because they finished off as the team that didn't make the playoffs. But when you look at Robert Covington in the games that he played, they had a winning record, and it was 22 games, by the way. It wasn't like he just played 10 games. He played 22 games, and even in that small sample size of 22 games, defensively, that whole team dynamic changed, and a lot of people just overlook his impact for reasons I just do not understand. But despite all of the praise that I just heaped upon him, Robert Covington, let's be honest, he struggles with consistency, which even though when he got to Minnesota, he definitely impacted that team on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, 22 games is not enough for me to say he's going to be completely consistent and he's going to change out of that bad habit that he's always had throughout his entire career. But despite that, he is a prototypical 3-and-D player, and that despite his flaws, anybody would love to have that kind of player on their team. But moving on to the player that I have at number 9, I am going with Otto Porter. Otto Porter last year had a really interesting year. When he was in Washington, he put up relatively decent numbers, but once he got traded to Chicago, he played amazing, efficient in every single category of the game of basketball. I mean, this is a guy that defensively, he's not elite or anything, but he is definitely more than capable. And when it comes to his shot creating, it's not like he's going out there crossing people up and setting up himself for open threes and everything. But I will say he's not just a spot up guy. He can definitely handle the ball a little bit better compared to especially when he entered into the league. But the reason that I have him at the number 9 slot is that he's just not dynamic on the offensive side of the ball, or even defensively, comparison not just to players above him, but even Robert Covington. But despite that, he is still a really good player and definitely deserves to be number 9. But moving on to the player that I have at the number 8 slot, I am going with Jalen Brown. Now, me as a person that hates the Boston Celtics, trust me when I tell you I love Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown is one of my favorite young players in the league, and sometimes I think he gets underrated by a lot of people on social media and in the NBA community for reasons that I kind of understand, and it's very tough for me to make that argument that he is underrated because of how he performed last year. Though he did catch on in the ending of the season and in the playoffs, he kind of came alive in some games and some moments. But let's be honest here, Jalen Brown is the definition of inconsistency. Just like other young players in the league, it's just ridiculous how inconsistent Jalen Brown can be. But despite that, he is a two-way player, can play offensively at a solid, capable level when he's on. And though defensively, he's not like at an elite level in comparison to not just people on this list, but even in comparison to someone on his team like Marcus Smart, he can definitely still take that step to an elite level defender and further solidify his spot as one of the better young players in the NBA. But moving on to player number 7, I have Brandon Ingram. Now, Brandon Ingram was a pretty tough player to rank on this list because though he did explode around the last 10 games of the year, and I do expect him to take a jump in his game, let's be honest, this is about projections for next year. Injuries and also situation should come into play. And when you look at Brandon Ingram's injury history with the blood clots and how it ended his year last year when he was having the best run of his career, that's something that you have to take into consideration. And also when you consider the fact that he's not really in the best of situations for his play style. He's not really much of an off-ball threat as he isn't really a great shooter. And on this team, there really is no spacing in that starting lineup. Zion, Lonzo, Jackson Hayes. I mean, the only guy that's capable of shooting is Jrue Holiday in the starting lineup, and he's average when it comes to his shooting ability, and that's not great when it comes to Brandon Ingram's playstyle and the spacing on this team. But despite that, I do expect him to have at least some productive type of year. He's finally in a situation that they're not rushing him to be something that he realistically just isn't. He's a capable defender, can handle the ball, can dribble, also can pass at a really solid level for a player of his age, and he can score the basketball at a really good level for a player of his age. Now at the 6th position, I have Danilo Gallinari. Now a lot of people may be wondering, what the hell, you have Gallinari over Ingram? Well, yeah, I do, because when you look at what Danilo Gallinari was able to accomplish last year, a lot of people overlooked it and slept on it for reasons I just did not understand. Yes, I understand that Lou Williams was having an amazing year. Yes, Montrezl Harrell did explode and become a candidate for most improved player of the year. But when you look at what Danilo Gallinari was able to accomplish last year and the numbers that he put up, he definitely deserves to be number 6 on this list. I mean, just look at the numbers. He was a 20-point per game scorer on 46, 43, and 90 shooting splits, and also was grabbing 6 rebounds and 3 assists. This is a guy that was great on the offensive side of the ball and really stepped up and stayed relatively healthy comparison to the other years that he's had in the NBA. And honestly, when you look at what he was able to accomplish with the Los Angeles Clippers, he was just a part of them being great and overseeding everybody's expectations, as Lou Williams was, Patrick Beverley was, Montrezl Harrell was. I mean, he was very integral to their success, and I gotta put him on that list for that. And next year, with him more than likely being the #1 scoring option, I definitely can see his productivity going up for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But moving into the top 5, at the number 5 position, I have Bojan Bogdanovic. Now Bojan, just like Danilo, a lot of people don't know how great this guy was. I mean, this guy was a 20-point per game scorer in the last 30 games of the season when Oladipo went out, and was arguably the best player keeping the Indiana Pacers afloat in the Eastern Conference. I mean, a lot of people really overlook Bojan's impact, and next year all he's going to be asked to do is step in and do the exact same thing, and I definitely think he will rise to the occasion. Now, though defensively he isn't as great as a lot of other people on this list, I still think what he provides offensively is something that you cannot overlook, and his impact and his efficiency is something that is going to heavily help the Utah Jazz's success. But moving on to player number 4, at the number 4 position, I have Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris, man, I love Tobias. He is one of my favorite players in the league. Everybody clowns me in the comment section every time I talk about him, but this is a guy that can space the floor at a near elite level. Also, he isn't the greatest defender, but he's very flexible on the defensive side of the ball. He can take it to the paint and score if you want him to. He can shoot it from the mid-range. He can do everything offensively, and he rebounds at a very high level. And I think that last year, a lot of the production that we saw that slipped in his numbers in comparison to his time in LA, to his time with the Philadelphia 76ers, a lot of that was just due to the fact that Tobias Harris didn't really just have a specific role. When he was with the Clippers, it was very clear what his role was, but when he went to the Philadelphia 76ers, at times he'd be the 2nd, then the 3rd, then even the 4th option at times, and that can just get very confusing, and it can really mess up your consistency and what you're trying to do on the court. But I think next year they really defined their roles, adding Josh Richardson and Al Horford to that team. I definitely think he will step up and rise to the occasion and become a more capable offensive player for the Philadelphia 76ers. But moving on to the top 3, at the number 3rd position, I have Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton, I think, is getting a lot of flack by a lot of people for his contract, and I understand he's not worth that 5-year contract that they gave him, but when you think about it, the Bucks really had no choice. I mean, they're trying to convince Giannis Antetokounmpo to stay. He just won the MVP. They won 60 games. I mean, they're trying to bring everybody back to appease to Giannis Antetokounmpo to stay with the Bucks, probably for the rest of his career. But despite all that, Chris Middleton is a really solid player. I mean, this is a guy who can be an all-star caliber player. He was last year. And also, when you think of all the things that he does on the court, he can handle the ball really well. He's a solid passer, can score at a really solid level, is very efficient from the field and from three, and also defends at a really good level that a lot of people don't talk about. He is a two-way player. Now, the reason he doesn't crack the #1 or #2 spots, other than obvious talent, is because of the fact that he's not elite at anything. He's a good player at every aspect of the game of basketball. Good shooter, not great. Good defender, not great. Good scorer, not great. Good passer, not great. And because of that, I just can't put him above the players that I have at #1 or #2. But #3 is still the perfect spot for a guy like Chris Middleton. But moving on to the final two, at the #2 spot, I have LeBron James. Now, I know so many people are going to be rattled and pissed off that LeBron is not #1, but relax. I mean, people always compare LeBron to other players in the league, and they act like it's an insult for this man to not be #1 on the list. I just don't understand it. But regardless, LeBron James, we all know he's a great player. He's an elite player, one of the top 3 players in the NBA. If you want to have him at #1 on this list and the best player in the league, go ahead and do so. You were entitled to do so, and I wouldn't even be mad at you. LeBron James, an elite passer, in my opinion, is the best passer in the game of basketball. Can rebound just as good as anybody else on this list, can score at an elite level, can play defense at a borderline elite level when he tries. Keyword, when he tries, which is probably the #1 reason why I have him at #2 and not #1, because defensively he just doesn't even try. And if it was because of the injury that he didn't try when he came back, then why did he even come back in the first place? And if injuries are going to be a part of LeBron James' career, or at least a notable thing of his career moving forward, then that's something that we have to consider. And this list is about projections. He is getting older. He's entering an uncharted territory, and I would dare say already in for a player of his caliber playing at this level at this age. So I definitely think that when you look at LeBron James as a player, obviously an elite talent, one of the top 3 to 5 players in the league, deserves to be #2. You could argue #1. It really is a coin flip. But moving on to the player finally that I have at the #1 position, I got Kawhi Leonard. I mean, how can you look at what he did last year and come to the conclusion that he's not #1? I really just don't get it. If you want to have LeBron, that's fine, but Kawhi definitely, it should not piss you off that he's #1. I mean, this is a guy that plays elite on both sides of the ball. In my opinion, the best defender in the league, and the only reason, in my opinion, why I don't think he won Defensive Player of the Year or wasn't even given the consideration is because he played 60 games. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's defensive impact is through the roof. I mean, this is a guy that goes out there on a night-to-night basis and takes the best perimeter player from the beginning till the ending of the game. I mean, we saw it not just in the regular season, but in the postseason. What he did to Giannis, it was amazing. It wasn't just him, but he definitely still deserves a boatload of credit for what he did to Giannis Antetokounmpo in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then when you look at his overall game, can score at an elite level. The mid-range, he is an assassin. And also from 3, he is elite. He has worked on that 3-point shot throughout his entire career and is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. I mean, this guy can do it all. He isn't the facilitator that guys like LeBron are, but he definitely is not some slouch in that area, and he makes up for it in other aspects of his game. And if I'm being honest with you guys, after looking at what Kawhi Leonard did in this postseason, I just cannot have him anywhere on this list other than the #1 position. I mean, it was amazing. I don't gotta run it down because we all saw it, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. One of the greatest performances you will ever see in your lifetime. But that concludes this video, you guys. Make sure you drop a like down below so I can keep making fire videos just like this. Comment your opinions. I'm sure a lot of people have differences of opinions, especially at who I put at #1 and #2, but let me know in the comment section down below. Also hit that subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified after each and every single video that I post. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. The links for my social media will be in the description box also. Y'all have a great day. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Peace.